Good morning, hello and welcome. I'm Bhuvan for StudyIQ IAS English, and this is the Indian Express Explained, where we take a look at the main topics, the main themes of discussion that are put forward in the explained page of Indian Express. And alongside that, we also take a look at, say, the major news that you ought to, as a serious civil service aspirant, not miss, right? So, without further ado, let's get started. Neerja, Bulbul, Koda, Revisit, Dr. Shriram. Good morning, guys. Thank you for joining. So, let's get started without further ado. This is where you go ahead and connect with me if you have any problems or any doubts related to the topics that we discuss here today. This is my Instagram ID. And you will also find the whole PDF of this entire lecture uploaded on the Telegram channel, the link for which I will share with you later in the class. Right? Okay, let's get started. The first topic that I have for you. So if you were to open the Indian Express this morning, the first article that you'll take a look at is the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa. He has gone ahead and, well, he slammed Israeli occupation. So in terms of understanding this sympathizing attitude, this empathy of South Africa for, say, the people of Palestine, what is the historical relevance to it? And more importantly, what has changed, say, insofar as the journey of the African continent and more specifically South Africa is concerned? Okay, that we'll seek to understand. And more importantly, going above and beyond, say, what's written in the newspaper, we will also seek to analyze the accusation of apartheid that is put against or leveled against Israel. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and give you pointers from both sides. So pointers that will add to the value of yes, Israel is an apartheid state, as well as counter arguments from the Israeli side, which say that no, Israel is not an apartheid state. Okay, and based on the facts of the discussion that will be put forward here, you go ahead and form an own opinion, right? So that's what we are going to do today in the first discussion. Sheshmani, good morning, welcome, right? So first, let's understand the whole context of this discussion. So you have the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa. He has gone ahead and he has slammed the Israeli occupation. Now what you realize is in 2023, okay, as of today, you find that, well, South Africa is Israel's biggest trading partner. So it begs common sense, or it begs the question as to why South Africa has gone ahead and jeopardized such a strong bilateral relationship. If you are, say, the most strongest partner in terms of trading with Israel, why would the South African government go ahead and criticize the actions of Israel? Okay, so let's understand that. Historically, what you find is that South Africa has been sympathetic to the Palestinian plight. Okay, it was, in fact, it formed diplomatic relations with Palestine soon after its own apartheid government was thrown off in 1990. Now, you must be aware that South Africa has its own apartheid problem. So if you are, again, following sports, you must have realized that, well, it was boycotted from sports for a long time because of this policy of apartheid that was put in place, where you had, say, discriminatory laws of racial subjugation of the whites over the blacks. Okay, so this was a state policy of South Africa. It had its own problems, and it managed to come out of it in the 90s. So you see that there is a basic congruence insofar as the empathy of the South African people or the government to the plight of the Palestinians is concerned, because once again, what you realize is that there is a common converging point. Okay, so let's understand the two primary reasons why South Africa is sympathetic to Palestine. Okay, that's very important to understand it point-wise now. So number one, what you find is that its own experience of discrimination and disempowerment, that it has been through what, say, the people of Palestine are going through right now. So it is more able to, say, relate to the plight of the Palestinians, and thus it would be morally incorrect for them to stand against the Palestinians. That's reason number one. And reason number two is that, well, what you find is that Israel today is seen as backed heavily by the West. Okay, the Western nations have gone ahead and put their collective support behind the state of Israel. But South Africa sees this from a different lens. It sees that the West was responsible, the same West was complicit, in fact, in so far as the continuance of apartheid in South Africa is concerned. Okay, or was concerned. So what you find is these are the primary two reasons why South Africa right now is willing to go ahead and criticize Israel, irrespective of the fact that, well, point number one, it is Israel's biggest trading partner. That the moral reasons are taking precedence over the economic reasons for South Africa. Now, the accusation that is leveled against Israel, that is Israel an apartheid state, yes or no? That's a very important question from the civil services point of view. Okay, and one question that will require multiple dimensions to be understood. So let's understand the multiple dimensions one by one. But before we go ahead and understand the dimensions, it is very important as a civil service aspirant to first understand one basic fact, that apartheid has a definition under international law. That the example of South Africa is an example of apartheid, but not exactly the entire form of apartheid. Okay, so let's understand what the 2002 Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, how does it go ahead and define my apartheid as? So let's look at it one by one. An institutionalized regime of oppression and domination by one racial group over another and committed with the intention of maintaining that regime. Two keywords we need to understand here of systemic oppression and domination. Okay, so this is the primary definition, the international definition of apartheid under 2002 Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Correct? Now let's go ahead and understand the facts of the case. Is Israel guilty of apartheid? Okay. What are the accusations being made against it? Number one, Israel has been accused of considering the Palestinians as a demographic threat, right? And imposing measures to control and decrease their presence and access to land in Israel and OPT, the occupied Palestinian territory. Okay. So before we go forward, if you were to go ahead and say categorize the entire area. So if this is Israel for me, and if say this is what we know as Palestine today, please understand that you have Arabs who live here and Arabs who live outside the Palestinian territory or the occupied Palestinian territories. Okay, which means that Israel does have Arabs within its territory. Okay. Now, when you go ahead and analyze this definition and then look at the facts here, that you have Arabs that exist in Palestine as well as in Israel. So, for me to go ahead and level this argument that yes, apartheid is being carried out as a state policy by the government of Israel, then you need to recognize that, well, the similar laws or the similar, say, snatching away of laws must be done equally to both these parties. Correct? That has to be understanding first. Now let's look at this case by case. Okay. So what is Israel accused of? It is accused of Judaizing areas of Israel and the West Bank, which continue to put thousands of Palestinians at risk of forcible transfer. Eventually, it is a question of land. Eventually, it is a question of character of land. So in the Indian Express, you also find that there is another article that says, well, how exactly was the Israel state? How did it get formed? So you had these initial people who were again migrating from Europe. Many places were first considered to be the, say, Jewish homeland. What could be the Jewish homeland? Where could it be? You know, you had, say, one proposal that was Argentina. Many other proposals were there. Eventually, it was decided that you are going to go ahead and make your home at the most holiest of shrines for the faith of Israelis, okay, the Jews, and that was to be near Jerusalem. Now, please understand that Jerusalem that time and that entire area that we say consider as Palestine, okay, that was under the British control, because you had the Ottoman Empire that went ahead and, well, it disintegrated. The Allies went ahead and distributed individual areas amongst themselves, and thus you had the British mandate that came as a result of the Balfour Declaration. Okay. So now what you found was that Israelis were going ahead and buying huge tracts of land in that particular area. You had absentee landlordism that was followed, which means that the tillers and the owners of the land were not the same. So it was easier for the Israeli people, or so-called Jewish people in fact, to go ahead and buy huge tracts of land. So this eventually formed the Jewish state of Israel that we know of today. Okay. So now, when you consider what is happening today in 2023, what is Israel accused of? It is accused of oppression without borders and treating the Palestinians as lesser citizens. Please understand the key term here. The Palestinians as lesser citizens, which means we are looking at the Arabs who are in Palestine. What about the Arabs who are a part of the Israel state? Well, that is a part of the counter arguments now, which the defenders of Israel will say that, look, if we have a particular law, say law X, okay, now we have it being, say, uniformly imposed on the Palestinian Arabs, but on the Israeli Arabs, well, they are exempt from it. So, does it satisfy the criteria of apartheid? If you have a particular law, the disenfranchisement of that law or taking away of that law from a particular racial group uniformly is a part of apartheid. But then the Israeli state says, no, that's not how we do it here. Okay, let's look at it. Recently in 2018, you had a particular law called the Basic Law Israel as the Nation State of the Jewish People. This was passed in 2018, which is basically going ahead and reinforcing the complete superiority of the Jewish people when it comes to housing, access to land, and urban planning and respect for others' culture and language. So you see, you have particular laws that again the supporters of Palestine will put forward saying, you know what, this is discriminatory. You have the Citizenship Act of Israel, wherein if a person from the Palestinian side were to marry someone in the Israeli side, they will not be going and getting, say, the access to those rights and privileges that are available to the other Israelis. So these are put forward as an accusation, as evidence of the accusation that apartheid is being carried forward in Israel. Okay, you have, say, those laws. In fact, certain historical evidences exist wherein you had a particular tract of land. Okay, this was put on sale. It was later found that, say, around 80% of it has been taken and bought over by the Arabs. And thus, you suddenly had the Israeli state cancel the allotment of the land altogether, because eventually, my friends, you have to realize that it is about the land, and not just the land, but the character of the land, who is in charge of the land, right? So you have these kind of discriminatory maneuvers that has played out over, say, the last 50, 60, 70 odd years. But when you go forward and you look at, say, the counter arguments now, okay, because as civil service aspirants, it's imperative that you know both sides of the coin and form your own opinion, right? So let's look at the counter arguments that Israel says to justify that no, Israel is not an apartheid state. Okay, number one, first, Israel is claimed as a multiracial, multicolored society, and look at this, where the Arab minority actively participate in the political process. You have the Arabs in the Israeli government who are a part of its Knesset, who are a part of Mossad, who are a part of the highest levels of governance. Now compare that to, say, the South African example as we know it. Did you have, say, the blacks who were part of the political process or in charge of governance? No. So this is how Israel refutes, saying if this was indeed apartheid, well, this wouldn't be a reality. But then this is a reality in present day Israel. You have one of the highest judges of the Israeli Supreme Court who is of the Arab descent. Yes. So this is used by the Israel government saying, no, we are not an apartheid state. Number two, evidence is also pointed to the fact that incitement to racism is a criminal offense, as is discrimination on the basis of race and religion. Once again, if an apartheid state has this as a part of its codified law, and if it is uniform in application, can you go ahead and categorize Israel as an apartheid state? Okay, I'll leave it up for you to decide. Number three, defenders of Israel also point out, and this is very interesting, okay? This is said that, well, you have, say, the Israeli state where you have Jewish plus Arabs both, okay, in Israel. But in Palestine, what you find is it's just the Arabs. So now the defenders of Israel say that, well, why is it that you do not have a single Jewish household in Palestine? You know, you have, say, the Jewish community that is quite vibrant or is present in India, in several other parts of the globe. Yes. So if they are existing across the globe, common sense tells me that they will obviously exist 10 minutes from Jerusalem, which is one of the most holiest of shrines for the Jews. Why is it then that they do not exist in Palestine? They point out to the fact that, well, Palestine also goes ahead and, well, discriminates heavily to the point of prejudice and violence against the Jews. And thus, the demarcation is drawn there and then. This is how Israel demarcates who are the Arabs who are a part of Israel and who are the Arabs who are not a part of Israel. Okay? And thus it says that, well, if you are a part of the Arab community that is a part of Israel, you have full protection and full rights. Yes, rights are given. But if you are an Arab from the Palestinian area, you are not treated as an Israeli citizen. In fact, what they say is that the law of armed conflict takes in then. Why? Because you are not an Israeli citizen in the first place. Right? And thus, the law of armed conflict tells me that I can go ahead and prohibit and restrict certain rights and freedoms in order to maintain the sovereignty of the nation so in discussion. Correct? Please understand the demarcation here, because once again, if the examination in the mains perspective does go ahead and ask you to answer this question, the facts of the case should be at your disposal. Only then can an informed opinion say follow or an informed analysis follow. Right? So, not a single Jewish community in Palestinian control. You also find that Palestine has made law, a complete law, that if you go ahead and sell any part of any land under Palestinian control to the Jews, well, you are going to be punished by death. Okay? But in contrast, what you find is that in Israel, Arabs enjoy full property rights, which are enforced by the courts. Okay? So therein is the demarcation again. Would you categorize this as the nature of the apartheid under the 2002 Rome Statute that we discussed here? Okay. Now what you'll find is that those who are on this side of the fence, who are going ahead and say criticizing or accusing Israel of apartheid, they will often point to the fact that, well, you have luminaries like, say, Desmond Tutu, okay, or Mahatma Gandhi, all of whom have gone ahead and criticized the actions of Israel and stood up for the rights of the Palestinians. Okay. Recently, you will find that, say, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, B'Tselem, which is an NGO based in Israel, they have all gone ahead and criticized Israel, saying, you know what, your actions are discriminatory, your actions fall under the international definition of apartheid. But you also find that Israel vehemently opposes all of these accusations by saying, well, they are anti-Semitic in nature. Okay. But you also find at the same time, and look at the whole, point of this aspect, that at the same time what you also find is that former Israeli prime ministers have gone ahead on record and said, yes, some of the actions of the Israeli government may be construed to be falling under the international definition of apartheid. So you see, things are not very clearly demarcated here. It's not everything is white and black. There's a lot of gray. Once again, why? It's a conflict area. The definitions of, say, international law vis-a-vis citizens, vis-a-vis law of armed conflict, all of this create multiple subcategories. And thus you find that the accusation of apartheid has to be taken on merit rather than rhetoric. Correct? So let me know what are your thoughts. Okay, I have presented the thoughts, the facts before you. So you look at it now. This is the American Jewish Committee, which essentially looks after the interests of the Jews in US of A. Okay, and what you find is that, well, Israeli Arabs represented where? Go ahead and look at it. Knesset, Supreme Court, Governing Coalition, Defense Forces, Diplomatic Corps, Police. So if the Arabs are getting representation in government services, would you go ahead and categorize it as apartheid? Well, did you find any, say, black in South Africa that time being a part of the governance structure? Yes, because if your laws are discriminatory from the outset and they are discriminatory towards your citizens, then you can go ahead and categorize, say, the larger definition of apartheid. But in Israel's case, it is very clear. It says we are going ahead and making two different subcategories. One, the Israeli Arabs. Number two, the non-Israeli Arabs. And thus, I have every right to go ahead and protect the interest of not the Jews, but also my Israeli Arabs versus those who intend to harm the very nature of the Israeli state. Right? So these are the facts of the case, and Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa. Once again, you understand why South Africa is so sympathetic and empathetic to the plight of the Palestinians. Why? Once again, it has a historical background to it. More importantly, it has a moral background to it. Correct? Yes, Vikrant, I agree with you. They also say that they're in a state of continuous war. In fact, which is why, Vikrant, I brought up this particular point here of the law of armed conflict. Yes, if you look at the last line that I have for you here, the relationship of Arabs in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip is governed primarily by the terms of the law of armed conflict, which means you will not enjoy all of the rights and privileges that are guaranteed, say during peacetime. That the state has absolute power to take steps to make sure that it maintains the basic character of the state as well as protect its sovereignty. Correct? Right. So that was the first discussion I had for you. Is Israel an apartheid state? Let me know your thoughts in the comment box. Whether which part are you leaning on? You know, given that Israel and Palestine has been in the news for the wrong reasons, it is imperative that you go ahead and prepare the arguments either for or against, depending on which side you are taking. But make sure that you have the ample justification for those points. You know, it needs to be an informed analysis, and eventually, if you want to take sides, well, that's your particular choice. Correct? Okay. That was the first discussion, my friends. If you understood the whole apartheid accusation, if you understood Israel's viewpoint, if you understood the Palestinian viewpoint, go ahead and leave me a like. Let me look at your chats. Something is up. 1 second. Okay. Let me go ahead and let me know your thoughts too. And don't forget to leave me a like, because, well, those are the minor motivations that I as an educator enjoy. Okay. You will find the PDF of this entire lecture uploaded here at around, say, noon. Right. Let's move on to discussion number 2. Now, this is not something that you will find in, say, the Indian Express today, but I would be amiss if I didn't discuss this morning. So today is 16th of October and a very, say, a dark day in the history of India, because on this day was implemented the partition of Bengal by the infamous Curzon. Okay. So it's a very apt day to go ahead and look at the entire saga of the partition of Bengal and the consequences that followed after that. Okay. So let's look at it one by one. Firstly, you had the Bengal presidency that encompassed present-day Bengal, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Assam. Assam, that was known as NEFA that time. Okay. So the entire northeast, in fact, was a part of the Bengal presidency. Now, you had the official explanation given by the English. Firstly, they wanted to go ahead and break this entire, if you look at it now, the official reasons versus what was intended. Okay. What was the intention and what was the official reason? The official reason was, well, it is administration that is getting affected. Okay. Which is why I'm going to go ahead and divide the particular area. Okay. But the intended reason was to go ahead and break the back of nationalism that was starting to fledge in West Bengal. Okay, especially Kolkata, that time's Calcutta. Okay. So nationalism was to be hurt. And thus Curzon comes up with a plan. He says, I'm going to go ahead and break West Bengal, Bengal presidency that time. Okay. So the British officials maintained that the huge size created difficulties for effective management and neglect of eastern regions. So primarily, the reason put forward was administrative, but the intention was nothing to do with administration per se. Okay. So now Curzon's intention, this gentleman here, his intention was to specifically divide the two major communities, the Hindus and the Muslims. Okay. And thus began what we can probably construe as the beginning of the divide and rule policy that the British followed up until at least the partition. Even thereafter in the post-independent history of India too, you find that some of the actions of the British could be construed to be a continuation of this official state policy that they have, say, followed right since at least 1905, the partition of Bengal. Okay. So let's look at it now. Curzon planned to split Odisha and Bihar and join it with districts of Bengal and Assam. So you look at it here. The red districts, the green districts, the blue ones, okay. The green ones, these are the districts that were detached to form the new province, okay. These were the districts of Assam that were attached to the new province, and these were my princely states that were left in the middle, okay. So you had all of this rearrangement that was done. almost as a puzzle that Curzon wanted to solve. But the eventual goal was to break the back of nationalism and at the same time go ahead and drive a wedge between the two major communities, the Hindus and the Muslims. Okay. So the western districts form the other province with Odisha and Bihar, and the Nawab of Dhaka who goes ahead and supports the whole partition process. Yes, why? Once again, it was quite obvious that they were going to be the majority in this new particular state, almost by a margin of 2/3 to 1/3. So you found that the Muslims, led by the Nawab of Dhaka, goes ahead and supports this. The Hindus oppose it. Okay. Now, what you find is, in terms of the character of the Indian national movement, the partition of Bengal is a very important landmark. Up until then, if you look at the, say, history of Indian nationalism, right after 1857 up until, say, 1905, you find that there was a lull. Nothing, in fact, if you're reading your books, you'll find not a lot is happening. You're reading about newspapers, you're reading about journals, you're reading about all of these magazines that are getting published. So as a student, you must be wondering, why isn't anything happening? Well, that is the whole point. Nothing was happening because the groundwork was being laid. Public consciousness was being aroused and arised by these particular publications. You had individuals with different newspapers, journals, not just in English language, but also in regional language, all publishing, arising the public out of the slumber that they were in. So this groundwork was laid at least from, say, 1857 onwards up until 1900s. And this particular action by the British now goes ahead and gives a springboard to this whole foundation that has been put forward. Okay. Now, what is the springboard? Up until then, you had these people who would go with the power of the pen, if you understood it that way. The moderates, they were in charge of the entire freedom struggle process. But slowly you find that a group of individuals are now getting disillusioned. That they think that, well, it is not just the pen that is going to win the freedom for me, that I also need the sword. Okay. And thus you had these two factions that came up within the Indian National Congress, the moderates and the extremists. Okay. In Hindi, you tell them as the Naram Dal and the Garam Dal. Okay. So what do you find? The partition triggers radical nationalism, and thus people are shocked. Why? Because again, it's a blatant display of the British policy of divide and rule. Now, moderates and extremists, three very important Congress sessions that you need to be aware of. First, partition of Bengal announced in 1903. 1905, 16th October, it is implemented. And you find in 1906, the Congress session, which was to be in the center of nationalism. That time's center of nationalism in India was Calcutta. And thus you found that, well, it was going to be a clash of two thoughts, of two different schools, of moderates versus extremists. Thankfully, at the right time, and in fact at the last possible time, the moderates go ahead and convince Dadabhai Nauroji, the grand old man of this freedom struggle, if you were to so understand. He comes and lends his weight with the moderates. So in the Calcutta session, where Dadabhai Nauroji is elected as the president, you have a particular stalemate, or at least some peace is bought. Some time is bought for the time being. But this is like, you're papering over the cracks. You're not solving the problem yet. So in 1907, now this attention shifts to my Maharashtra side. First, they decide that, well, it will be held in Nagpur, the Congress session. But then the moderates realize that, well, Nagpur is a hotbed of the extremists. Yes, you have Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who is from Nagpur. And thus you find, to avoid that confrontation once again, they shift the location of the 1907 Congress session to Surat at the last minute. Okay. Now, both moderates and extremists, obviously, they were not happy with this development. Separate meetings are held. Okay. And the divide between the moderates and the extremists now grows further. Okay. Both are now not agreeing to the part of each other. But in 1908, another crucial change happens. Up until then, what you found was that in such meetings, say in the 1907 meeting, you had the extremists that would turn up in huge numbers. Too many extremists would turn up for the meeting. Okay. So thus, they had the larger numbers, the larger voice. But in 1908, a significant change is made. And what is the change? The All India Congress Committee, made up of elected members, and therefore thronging the meetings, would no longer work for the extremists. Thus, elected members only would be a part of these meetings, and thus the number strength did not matter. This infuriates the extremists even more. The divide further grows. Right? So instead of, say, conciliation or a conciliatory approach, you also find that the moderates were quite shrewd in the way they went ahead and negotiated this divide that was happening between them and the extremists. Right? So the emergence of the extremist faction, now you have an extremist faction, okay, that is well and truly a part of the Congress hierarchy. And because of their emergence, you find that the Muslim politics also gains strength. You have the Morley-Minto reforms, 1909, okay. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he goes to England to meet Secretary Morley in the hope that, well, certain concessions will be given. And the concessions that are given are quite to the opposite and the surprise of both the extremists and the moderates. Okay. So in 1909, the separate electorates established for Muslims and Hindus, and thus you find that the freedom struggle is well and truly now in 3 different courses. There are 3 different parties to it. Okay. Now, as a result of this entire partition of Bengal that was finalized and came into force on this day in the year 1905, okay, close to almost 100 plus years ago, what you find is that, well, the Swadeshi movement comes as a simultaneous, say, outpouring, a reaction to this. But is it a direct reaction? Did it start after, say, 1903? No. What you find is that Swadeshi movement's roots lie much earlier. Okay? Is the chat working, guys? Just give me a second. There's some problem here. 1 second. Okay, I hope it's okay. आप मुझे देख पा रहे होगे. Anyways, so how do you go ahead and say understand the timeline of the Swadeshi movement? Let's understand this one by one. Okay. So first, you have the first Swadeshi movement that you can go ahead and understand. You know, from say 1850 to roughly 1904. Okay. The first Swadeshi movement can be discussed about. You know, you had leaders like Dadabhai Nauroji, Gokhale, Ranade, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, right? All of them went and promoted the Indian version of nationalism. This happened here, the first Swadeshi movement. But before that also, you had instances where cloth and the character of cloth was used by the, say, nationalists, by those who were aspiring for a better India. You know, how did that go ahead and become a central focus? Let's understand the role of cloth for 2 minutes now. Okay. So one obviously example is this. Okay. Let's look at the other examples that I have for you. In terms of 1871, yes, if I'm not wrong, 1871 to 72, you had the Namdhari Sikhs. Okay. The Namdhari Sikhs, they went ahead and, well, they boycott English cloth in Punjab. You had the example of Ram Singh Kuka. If I'm not mistaken, Ram Singh Kuka. Yes. So English cloth is being boycotted in Punjab. Ram Singh Kuka, well, he's going ahead and boycotting English cloth, English education, yes, even courts, correct? In 1905 and 1917, when you look at, say, point number C, from 1905 to 1917, once again, cloth becomes a part of this entire process, my Swadeshi movement, okay? So you have, say, revolutionary groups, Anushilan Samiti, Jugantar Party, all of them attempt revolts and revolutions. But at the same time, the women, the children, the students, they come up in large numbers. You know, foreign-made cloth is looked at as absolute no. It is going to be Indian clothes, Indian companies, Indian educations, Indian institutions. Everything is going to be Indian. That was the whole point of it. So once again, cloth becomes an important part here too. Right? And my last example, if I were to go ahead and go it for you, was if you look at it from, say, 1918 onwards also, point D. From 1918 to 1947, okay, you have Mahatma Gandhi and his version of charkha and self-sustainability and wearing cloth with pride of whatever it was that was coming from your own land. So you see how the definition of revolution and nationalism is intrinsically linked to the identity of an individual and of a community or a country. And that is linked, in this case, you find, to clothes, to academics, to companies, right? So Swadeshi movement, in a way, was the fundamental basis of all of this, okay? So let's look at Swadeshi movement roots in the anti-partition movement. So you had petitions that was being put forward by my moderates in papers such as Hitabadi, Sanjeevani, Bengali. And look at this. Goods such as Manchester cloth and Liverpool salt to be boycotted. You were going and singing Vande Mataram, Rakhis on each other's hands were to be tied. Rabindranath Thakur coming up with the suggestion to promote brotherhood between the Hindus and the Muslims. Why? Once again, he understood the nefarious designs of the British, that it was not just administrative convenience that they were looking at, it was more importantly to go ahead and drive a wedge between this uniform composite nationalism that was now developing in Kolkata or Calcutta that time. Okay. So more importantly, the character of the Swadeshi movement, when you look at the character, one important thing that you need to understand is that much like, say, the Quit India movement, it was a leaderless movement. Yes, you had certain leaders who took charge in certain areas, but overall, this was a movement that was led by women and by students. Pickets were organized by women. Students went ahead and boycotted those institutions that were, say, linked to the British. Institutions were set up in Kolkata, okay, which were, again, traced its roots to these nationalists from Bengal. Companies were set up that exist till this date, that was set up again during that particular time. So for those of you who have ever used, say, the cream Borolin, okay, well, if you have not used it, this used to be the father, you might say, considered to present day Boro Plus, okay. So Borolin, for example, owes its origin to one such company that was set up during the Swadeshi movement, right? So movement was leaderless, and once again, the common misunderstanding that students have that this was just limited to Bengal. Unfortunately, no. Okay, you find that Swadeshi movement had its again participation in Punjab. Lala Lajpat Rai and Ajit Singh took charge there. Okay, out down south in Madras presidency that time, you had Chidambaram Pillai, who went ahead and bought a particular company and turned it into an Indian shipping company. Yes, so that Indianization of companies, of education institutions, of this whole infrastructure that was there in place was happening. Yes, Maharashtra, you had Bal Gangadhar Tilak who did the same. So please understand this, that this is a major mistake that students make, that Swadeshi movement was just limited to Bengal. Why? Because it was limited or to do with the partition of Bengal? No. Obviously, it was to do with the partition of Bengal, but more importantly, its expanse was a pan country. Okay. Sorry. So let's look at the annulment of the partition now. So in 1911, you have Lord Hardinge, who comes up. Firstly, the other fellow, Curzon, is sent back after 1905. He is met with swift and a lot of resistance from the Indian side. So he's sent home. He's packed off home. Okay. So in 1911, you had Lord Hardinge, who goes ahead and annuls this partition. And a very interesting anecdote comes out of this. So you have the Grand Delhi Darbar. King George V and Queen Mary arrive in all their regality in India. Okay, they're received by the various princes and all of these other stakeholders in that during that time. And the story so goes that a particular king. Now, if you have to go ahead and understand it this way. So if suppose you are King George V, okay, and if I am one of those princely states, say Raja. So the protocol was that I would be dressed in my best clothes, in my best jewelry. I would come, I would bow down before you, and then without showing my back, I would exit the room. But one such king did not follow this protocol, which caused a lot of furor, a lot of anger among the British that time. He came dressed in his own manner, not a lot of jewelry. And after bowing down before the king, he goes ahead and shows his back, right? And that particular king was the Gaikwad of Baroda, okay, Maharaja Sayaji Rao III, and well, thus the ensuing controversy that a student of UPSC must know about of the Grand Delhi Darbar of 1911, okay. So the British shifts the administrative capital from Calcutta to Delhi. Now once again, two reasons for this, guys. Okay, two particular reasons as to why this shift happened. Number one, once again, They wanted to get as far away from Bengal as possible, because Bengal now was becoming the hotbed of nationalism. Okay, and thus to insulate themselves from this hotbed of nationalism that Bengal was becoming, the British thought, well, it's time to go ahead and move further north to Delhi. And at the same time, please realize that after the annulment happened, the Muslims who were happy that they would be getting the larger share of the pie, they were left unhappy. And so to go ahead and placate them, you found that the British shifted the capital back to Delhi, because once again it was associated with the Mughal dynasty. So two particular reasons as to why the Britishers go ahead and change the capital from Kolkata, or that time's Calcutta, to Delhi. Right? So this is essentially the annulment of the partition, the whole story of the Bengal partition that came into force, into action on this date in the year 1905. Right? Let's look at some of the questions, my dear friends, that I have for you today. What I expect you to do is that go ahead and answer these in a linear format in the comment box. And as we always do, we will recognize those individuals who answer the questions correctly. Okay, question number 1, part A. Partition of Bengal in 1911 was done on administrative grounds. Please correct this, that will be 1905. Okay, partition of Bengal in 1905 was done on administrative grounds. Partition of Bengal in 1947 was done on administrative and religious grounds. Okay, because Bengal has been divided twice in our history. So go ahead. Which of these are incorrect? Let me know your answers in the comment box. Question number 2. Pune, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Chennai, Chidambaram Pillai. Delhi, Ajit Singh. Punjab, Lala Lajpat Rai. Identify the correctly matched in respect of Swadeshi movement. The options being A and B, A, B and C, A, B and D, or all of the above. Let me know your answers in the comment box. Question number 3 for you. Which of the following may not be considered to be a moderate leader? So I told you there were two factions that developed, the moderates versus the extremists. So the extremists, we all know very well, the Lal, Bal, Pal trio comes to my mind straight away. But then go ahead and tell me which of these may not be considered to be a moderate. Option 1, Firoz Shah Mehta. Option B, Madan Mohan Malviya. Option C, Surendranath Banerjee. Or option D, Aurobindo Ghosh. Okay, let me know your answers in the chat box. And the last question, a PYQ from the year 2019. Okay, this would be question number 4 for you. With reference to the Swadeshi movement, consider the following statements. It contributed to the revival of indigenous artisan crafts and industries, and the National Council of Education was established as a part of this Swadeshi movement. Identify the correct statements. Let me know your answers in the chat box, and let me know if you now understood the whole point of partition of Bengal and the reaction of the moderates and the extremists and the Muslims, the three primary stakeholders to this particular development that the British put forward, literally shoveled down the throat of the Indian nationalists in 1905. Okay, let me know your answers in the comment box. Right, before I go forward, my friends, on the 23rd of October, not long to go, we are looking at the Foundation P2I course. Okay, that's already in place. Many such students are already associated with this course. Okay, I look after the geography for general studies, as well as CSAT, environment and international relations. And so if you understand the way we go ahead and look at concepts here, more importantly, this outcome-based learning that we focus on, will go ahead and quickly connect with this entire course. Okay, and coming to you with extended periods of validity. So you might be someone who is looking to say appear for 2025 or even 2026. If you are one of those who's thinking long term, start now. Okay, it's never too early to start for the UPSC preparations given the unpredictable nature of this examination. And so thus, this validity that is a part of this entire course, choose your validity, choose the language of your delivery. Yeah, it comes in English, Hindi and bilingual. And make sure that you use the code BA Live because, well, two reasons, as I always tell my students. Number one, you get a huge discount, so much to your benefit. And to my benefit, well, I get to go ahead and associate with you in your classes. Okay, and so together we take a look at those subjects that I just told you about, and obviously my esteemed colleagues here go ahead and handhold you right through the entire process, each and every subject from prelims up until your interview stage, right? So it's a fantastic opportunity go ahead and sign up for this. You'll find the sign up link in the description box below. Right, my friends, the third last topic for the day. The GI tag now being given to a particular product of the famous state of Goa. Okay, so the cashews of Goa have been given GI tag status, and well, so why has it been given? What's the whole point of it? Okay, before we discuss what's the whole point of it, what was the problem that these cashews of Goa were facing, let's understand a couple of things first. So first, GI tag is given upon products that come from a particular area. It's essentially, you understand it as a trademark. Okay, that you go ahead and understand it's the right product. The veracity of the product is determined whether you have a GI tag or not, right? So you might be, say, going to Lucknow, for example. And so your family might like to go ahead and, say, do some chicken curry shopping. Yes, chicken is a particular cloth, not the one you eat, by the way. Okay. So if chicken curry shopping is on your agenda, well, you would be best advised to go ahead and look at the, say, emporium of the state government, which will have products that are GI tag certified, which means that their veracity is, say, guaranteed by that particular tag by the government. Now, obviously, for every product, you have, say, the cheap substitute that is often in place, right? So another example of this, if I were to go ahead and give you, is the example of Darjeeling tea. Yes, one of the first objects, one of the first products in India that was given the GI tag. Today, what you find is that, say, cheap tea that is grown in the southern hill slopes of Nepal, they make their way towards the Indian side, and they are marketed as Darjeeling tea. But because Darjeeling tea and the tea gardens of Darjeeling have GI tag certification, which is why you find that their market value is a lot higher than, say, the cheap variety that is imported or coming in illegally from Nepal, right? So this is the entire thought, that you go ahead and the product's veracity, its verification is done. It is indeed the original product and not, say, a counterfeit that you're buying. Okay. So it is given by the Geographical Indications Registry in Chennai. A question on this was asked previously in this very edition of this daily news analysis that we do here. Okay. So now, did cashew grow naturally in Goa? Unfortunately, no. It was native to the northeast, and well, the colonizers of Goa, the Portuguese bought it. Why again? The basic reason was not for food, but for, say, afforestation purposes. You find that the story of cashews in Goa is intrinsically linked to the arrival of the Portuguese. And thus you just didn't have, they say, the plantation areas, but the processing areas of these cashews that gave a lot of employment to the people there. Okay. Now what you find of late is that, well, you find a lot of counterfeit cashew that are coming in from the African countries, that they look and taste almost similar to the Goan cashew. But when you go ahead and process it, the differences are huge. Okay. Many of you must have heard of this particular drink that is very famous in Goa, goes by the name of Feni. Okay. It's a cashew-based alcoholic drink. Okay. It's commonly consumed in Goa. And so what you find is that this cheap variety that is coming in from the African countries, okay, that is essentially harming the interests of those farmers who go ahead and grow Goan cashew. And not just the farmers, but also the food processing industries that use that Goan cashew to create a variety of products, not just the Feni. Correct? So it's a quality check. Correct, as Vikrant says. It's a quality check. It's a quality check. It tells you that, yes, as a consumer, I am buying the right product. Okay. So Goa gets its GI tag. And if you were to go ahead and look at the GI tag of your individual states, yes. So many things come to my mind. For example, say the Mysore agarbatti comes to my mind, Mysore soap comes to my mind, chicken curry, Darjeeling tea. Yes. So as a civil service aspirant, firstly, there are so many items, that have been given GI tag in India. How are you going to remember them all? My advice to you is first look at your own state. Know your own state insofar as your preparation for current affairs is concerned. Okay. You should know about the products of your own state that have been given GI tag, and then go ahead step by step. That is a very feasible manner in which to go ahead and approach this. Okay. So thus you find that, well, cashews was used primarily for afforestation purposes and soil conservation purposes. Okay. So this is the GI tag for the cashew industry in Goa. Let's answer these questions, my friends, very quickly. Which of the above are related to GI tags? Paris Convention for Protection of Industrial Property or TRIPS Agreement of the WTO? So, well, of course, geographical indication tag is a pan-global certification, which means someone based out of, say, New York can go ahead and get a particular product, say my Goan cashew, based on whether the Goan cashew has been GI tag or not. So you do realize that it has pan-global certification. So go ahead and let me know which of the above are related to GI tags. Next question, which of the above have been given GI tags? Darjeeling tea, Mysore agarbatti, Gobindabhog rice and Katarni rice. Okay, Gobindabhog, West Bengal, Katarni, Bihar. Let me know which of these have been provided GI tags in India. Right, my friends, that concludes the 3 topics that I had for you today. You will find the entire PDF uploaded here. But don't go anywhere right now because we need to take a look at the questions of last class, okay? Without which my class would be incomplete. So let's look at it. The last class we discussed cricket's inclusion in Olympics. Yes, announced just this Sunday. You had the Honorable Prime Minister who went ahead and addressed the Olympic Committee's 141st session in Mumbai. Yes. So let's look at it. Which of the following is the length of a cricket pitch? Well, 22 yards. Straight away, a very straightforward question. Many cricketers have also written autobiographies by the same name. Okay. Let's look at question number 2. BCCI is a private autonomous organization. True. Absolutely true. Okay. BCCI receives institutional and financial support from Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. Unfortunately, no. It receives none of that. And Lodha Committee suggested reforms within the BCCI of not just administration but also the way you conduct yourself. Okay. As an organization, not just your responsibility to go ahead and promote and protect the interest of cricket lovers and cricket fans in India, but also that institutionalized framework within which cricket needs to grow in India. That was the ambit of the Lodha Committee reforms. So you find that the correct answers here being A and C. Okay. Let's look at question number 3. Under which schedule of the Constitution of India can the transfer of tribal land to private parties for mining be declared null and void? Okay. So you had the Samatha case. The Samatha versus government of Andhra Pradesh. Okay. Which essentially was related to this particular question, the 5th schedule being the answer, under which the rights of the tribals are protected. Under the 6th schedule, it is the AMTM, the Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram that are protected. Okay. We also looked at the Baiga tribe in last class. I hope you remember, guys. And so let's look at the PVTGs, the particularly vulnerable tribal groups in India. They reside in 18 states, absolutely true. And 1 union territory of Andaman and Nicobar, true again. A stagnant or declining population is a criteria, absolutely correct. There are 4 criteria, all of which we discussed in the last class. Okay. There are 95 PVTGs. No, unfortunately, no. There are just 75 of them, the highest being in the state of Odisha. 13 PVTGs are found in Odisha. And Irular and Konda Reddy tribes, Irular in Tamil Nadu and Konda Reddy, I believe, in Khammam district of Telangana. If I'm not mistaken, Khammam district of Telangana, they are included in the list of PVTGs. So the correct statements here being 1, 2 and 4 only. Okay, 3 is obviously incorrect. There are 75 of them across India. Okay, let's look at this question. Many of you got this incorrect, by the way, which I didn't expect, frankly. It was a very straightforward question. Okay, so which of the above are criteria for recognition of a national political party? You know, why was this such a difficult question? Let me have a look. Your answers here. Yes, I can see many answers that have just put forward in front of me. And I was just looking at your answers. Many of you have got this correct. So let's look at it, okay? There are just 3 basic criteria that you need to know for a political party to be considered national. Number 1, it should be recognized, okay? This is the term. It should be recognized as a state party in 4 or more states, number 1, okay? Number 2, you need to realize that in Lok Sabha elections only, okay? Your political party needs to poll at least 6% of the total valid polls in at least 4 or more states. Okay, 6% of the total votes in 4 or more states. Okay, and the third criteria is where you have got it wrong. that it needs to win 2% of the total seats in not less than 3 states. So 2% of the total seats in at least 3 states. Okay. So let's look at it. Recognition in 4 or more states, correct. At least 4 MPs in LS and RS. Well, nothing about the RS. Sorry, incorrect. Okay. And 1 seats in at least 4 states. Well, no, 3 states. At least 3 states is where you need to have at least 2% of the seats. Okay. So which of the above is the correct answer? A only. Okay. A only. Special summary revision, straightforward question, preparation of electoral rolls happens before every election, be it state or general election, where the State Election Commission or the Central Election, the Election Commission goes ahead and will revises its entire, say, electoral rolls to make sure that it is updated. Okay, so that is the whole concept of special summary revision. So these are my star individuals. I must thank them, each of them individually. Monica, Neeraja, Revisit, Crystal, Mandeep, Pooja, Coder, Shubham, Lekam, your neighbor, Tanish, Akshay, Ayush, Aditya, Anuj, Janvi and Rahul K. Guys, thank you so much firstly. I'm greatly pleased that many of you got all the questions correct. Okay, 1 or 2 might have got the Election Commission question incorrect. More importantly, remember the mistakes you are making. Don't make them again. Okay, that is the whole point of this entire 1 hour discussion in the morning. Okay, I hope that you learned a lot out of the questions that we did, the concepts that we did, and more importantly, as a parting statement to my dear students, all I can tell you is that for the Israel apartheid question, I have provided you with both sides of the argument, the pro-Israel as well as the counter-Israel argument. Please go ahead and go through these points again and form your own opinion. As civil service aspirants, you are expected to go ahead and form your own opinion rather than regurgitate anything that anyone else might be saying. Okay, that's it for today. I hope that you will answer the questions that I put forward in the comment box. And if you have any particular feedback, reach out to me on my Telegram channel or my Instagram ID. Okay, you will find the PDF of this entire lecture uploaded here at around say noon today. Right? Okay, that's it for today, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow morning again 8 AM. Till then, take care. Have a productive day.